What up gamers, I'm Jason and today on Dice & Dragons, I'm reviewing Cthulhu, Death May Die, Fight or Flight. This is another one of the CMON comic books, also published in conjunction with Guillotine Games, with story by Luna Enoch and Stefano Vietti, with art by Riccardo Crosa. Now, for those of you that are new to these videos, I will be discussing the comic book just with an overall general feel. You can take a look down below in the video description if you want to skip all of the spoilers. My final review score will be at the end of the video. Now we'll talk a little bit about the general setup and the story. The story does open up at an orphanage with one of our lead characters, Lisa. I said Lisa, but I believe it's just Lisa spelled with a Y. She has a talking goat head as a companion, and there are evil forces assaulting the orphanage. Lisa will be leaving the orphanage where she will encounter Jack and his unstoppable truck. She encounters Annabelle, who is a voodoo priestess, and Rocco, who fought in the trenches of World War I as they get caught up in the strange going-ons in town and must defeat the cultists and the Great Old Ones. Now, in this comic, you will see maybe some of your favorite characters from Cthulhu, Death May Die that will make an appearance. I believe it's a lot of the characters from the Unspeakable box based on the location of the Agwam house. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. And just the picture on the Unspeakable box, which I thought was pretty cool, is how they incorporated those elements. They really do a great job of capturing, the power of the name of the Great Old Ones. That's a major part of the story. And the cultists, well, they're very much faceless characters, and we don't really get an explanation as to why they'd want to summon the Great Old One, but they fit very well with the story. One of the critiques that I do have is I would say that a lot of the characters feel a little bit underdeveloped. We do get a little bit of background for the characters, but Rocco, why he'd want to be a part of this story, not quite sure. Annabelle with her voodoo roots and the mystical roots and things like that from her backstory, I feel works out very well. Also, Rocco, I feel, is just a good guy that gets caught up in a tough situation. He's got his unstoppable truck. He sees all these crazy things going on and sees an opportunity to be involved in putting a stop to it. And because of the way he and Lisa meet and how he feels about her, I do feel like there is a connection that develops between the two characters. He gets pulled along in the story as well. Now, this is very much a Cthulhu story, so expect lots of people maybe potentially going insane. Some heroes not even, being as heroic as they used to be. And lots of creepy things from beyond and horrifying things from beyond. And I definitely recommend not showing this to younger readers. Now, if they're able to play Cthulhu, Death May Die, they may be able to handle the comic book. But even then, a lot of the gruesome imagery is not present there, and you get a lot more terrifying stuff in this. Now, I do find that at least zombies and aliens, those things we've been sort of desensitized to over the years, whereas Cthulhu, well, not as popular in mainstream media, is something that the rising tentacles, the way that people are mind controlled, taken over, and the crazy things that happen and the sacrifices might really disturb some younger readers. Now, this very much feels like part of a growing and overall world, and there's some cool stories in the back for some of the other very powerful and favorite investigators. I forgot the name of the character, but the Pyrokinetic has a pretty cool story in the back. We also have the Private Eye, who gets on a steamship and has a pretty crazy adventure. So I really like that those small inclusions to fully flesh out the world of Cthulhu, Death May Die. Now, when I talked about zombicide day one, I feel like there's a lot of critiques because the world is a little shallow. It's hard to do things other than a vignette, almost like a day in the life. Whereas I do feel like you can build up to some stories in terms of Cthulhu, Death May Die. I don't think you're going to get this one big, long, overarching story. It didn't work that way. That's not how Lovecraft set up the Cthulhu mythos, but stories like this, these one-off adventures where you maybe have some recurring characters, work very well in this world of Cthulhu, Death May Die, and there are plenty of monsters, there is some gruesome fighting, so it does capture that element of the game and translate it very well to the comic book page. This is a comic book that I definitely enjoyed, and while it's not my favorite of the CMON comic book Kickstarters, it's definitely one of the ones that I'd recommend above the other two, and I think it stands out very well as a comic book in its own right, especially a horror comic book set in the Cthulhu mythos. So I've talked enough about it. I'm going to now break into spoilers as we'll go through a full overview of the story. Now, if you're interested, stick with us. If you just want my score of the comic book as you plan to pick it up yourself, you don't want any spoilers, take a look down below in the video description and skip ahead to the end of the video. So how does this comic book open up? Well, it opens up with mysterious things attacking the orphanage. We do have some wards that are put in place to protect the orphanage from these evil things by the headmistress. Unfortunately, we have the old milkman that shows up at exactly the wrong time, and he's proceeded to be brutally murdered. At that point in time, Lisa hears the headmistress discussing about Agram House, where to get some help from Annabelle, and she decides to take her companion, the dead goat head, who is a demon known as Malakova, who is her companion, that for whatever reason does oppose the forces of the Elder Ones, and helps her to make the journey. So she sneaks out, encounters Jack in his unstoppable truck, and makes their way to Agram House. On the way, they encounter Rocco. They don't give him a ride because they were assaulted by evil things as they're making their way to Agram House. So he's just sort of left on the side of the road, but will appear later on in the story. They do find Annabelle as well as some of the other investigators, and then all hell breaks loose as the cultists decide to attack Agram House. Well, these are all experienced investigators, so they put up quite the fight. They defeat the cultists, they defeat the monsters, but some of them are lost in the process. Now they're doing their cleanup, and these other investigators don't really embark on the quest. Annabelle and Jack do embark on it with Lisa, and on their way to their next location to get more information about the old ones by communicating with the spirits of the land. It goes really well as they do get a lot of information. We do get a lot more backstory about Jack. At the same time, we find out about Lisa's parents being murdered and then being the one in possession of the goat head. So there is some potential to carry Lisa on through other stories. Jack's Indian heritage comes into play as well when they get to the location where he knows to be a safe place where Annabelle can commune with the spirits of the locals. So I thought all that was really cool. We do meet Rocco, who is a former soldier and proves to be the muscle. We do get some background on him, but I think he's probably the least developed and has the least amount of reasons for participating in the story. It does feel like maybe he wants to make amends for some of the things that happened in the war, and just because he suffers from PTSD, which I actually thought that was included and portrayed really well in the story. But I don't really see his reasonings overall. I do like the real eerie feel that's going on in the world in this section of town, as there's like an overcast sky. There's clearly evil goings-ons, and a lot of people are scared and hiding in their house, but there are also those that have given themselves over to the cult that will be attacking our heroes as they make their way to try to discover what's going on. Now they do go to the university where they encounter Henry Armitage, who unfortunately, once the heroes, one of the people that defeated the Dunwich Horror, has now fallen prey to the very forces that he fought against and has become a creature of the old ones who protects his library. Now they do meet one of his colleagues who's able to help them decipher the diary of Wilbur Wheatley, the son of one of the elder gods. They move on to try to perform a ritual to figure out who is being summoned and stop the cultists. And in that, the heroes are eventually successful. There are some casualties along the way. Jack was possessed for a bit of time by the cult and even attacked some of the other heroes. The headmistress of the orphanage loses one of her hands. But at the end of the day, they are successful in stopping the great old ones. You do have Malkova who talks to Lisa and explains that the other ones will always be out there, always be a threat to humans, as long as people will foolishly seek their favor and try to summon them and bring them back to the world. So you really get a well-contained and well-designed story in the world of Cthulhu, Death May Die, and a cool story just in terms of the Cthulhu mythos. You do have some setup for these cults always being a threat, with the cult leader having seemingly died because of a backlash of the headmistress and Annabelle countering the summoning ritual, but they do rise again, leading you to know that there will be more stories, more cults, and this is something that CMON can easily continue. And I like the fact that this really isn't like a volume one. It's an individual story, meaning if you don't like this one, but maybe you want to see other stories, CMON will be able to tell different self-contained stories in the world of Cthulhu Death May Die, fleshing out this board game world and giving fans of it some really cool stories, and also appeal to fans of just the Cthulhu mythos in general. So I feel I've talked enough about this comic book. We got the extras for the game as well, which are pretty cool. If you want to see what those are, at the end of this video, there'll be a link to all of our comic book related content, so definitely check that out. Well, I'll be giving this comic book a 7.5. I think it's a solid comic book. It's not my favorite, but I think anyone that likes Cthulhu, likes comic books, horror comic books, will have an enjoyable time picking this up. So I'd just like to thank you and remind you now to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that YouTube will let you know when our next video is released. Down below in the video description, there are links to all of our social media feeds: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If you would like to see pictures of Julie and I playing Cthulhu Death May Die, there are plenty of those on our feeds. Also down below, there is a link to multizone.ca, a great Canadian game store. Check them out. Click the link, get 10% off your next purchase. You can probably find a copy of Cthulhu Death May Die if you're looking for it. And also a portion of that purchase will be returned to us. So it's a great way to support the channel at the same time. Now, popping up in front of me are going to be links to some of our previously released videos. Over here, our most recent release. And over here, we'll take you back to our playlist for all of our CMON comic book Kickstarter content. And don't forget, keep reading comic books, and most importantly, keep playing games.